A lot of you guys are like, yes, that's me too. The only thing I remember thinking in my head is, I don't know that I can do this. And with every contraction, I truly felt like, I'm not going to survive this. I can't do it. I don't know what I'm doing. It's getting worse and worse, and I just don't know what to do. And it was truly just survival mode at that point. I held my breath. You know, you tense up with every contraction, just trying to get through it. So I held my breath, and I tensed my body, and I just kept having these just not very positive thoughts going on in my head, as you can imagine. And so eventually she was born, and it took me a lot longer than I wanted to have our second, because I'm like, I can't do that ever again. Like, it's so traumatic. I can't even think about doing something like that again. But I knew that we wanted a second. We definitely felt called to a second. So when it was time, we got pregnant, and so I started doing research. And I was like, I know I'm supposed to breathe. This whole breathing thing, I think that's pretty important in labor and delivery. And they tell me, they tell you to relax your body, how important that is. And so I downloaded on my phone this hypnobirthing. Sounds a little, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. It's fantastic. I was like, anything, desperate. What's going to help me get through this labor and delivery? So I downloaded this hypnobirthing little podcast audio, and what it was this woman speaking very calmly, and I think she was English, and she was talking very calmly to this beautiful music set in the background, and she's just telling you to inhale, and she's counting with you, and then she's telling you to exhale and counting that out, and it's just like the most. I fell asleep to it for 2 months before she was born. Every night I hit play, and I'm like, yes. So for 2 months, it's all I'm listening to, right? Her voice in my head is counting, and I can hear it, and it's beautiful and calming and peaceful. And so it comes time again. Walked into the hospital, 5 centimeters dilated, ready to do this, and determined to make this a better experience, because I knew I just couldn't do it the other way again. And less than 3 hours later, she was born, and I remember the whole time thinking clearly and telling my husband, like, I'm present, like I'm here, I'm in control. I felt very much, very calm during the whole thing, and because I could hear her voice the whole time in my head, as soon as a contraction would start, I would just take a big inhale, and I could hear her counting in my head, so I would just follow her voice that I had listened to for months before she was born. And so it was incredibly powerful. My breathing, I was able to just have smooth, steady breathing the whole time, which was complete opposite of Hadley. And so it was truly a healing experience for me. It was ultimately just exactly what God knew I needed, because I was prepared, and because I chose to listen to the right voice, right? And I chose to step into a position where I could breathe easily by finding the right voice that I needed to listen to get me through. I mean, she truly, this English lady, I don't even know who she is, but she got me through it. So I had to share that, because I know how important it is. These voices in our head, they matter. They matter a lot, especially when we have a lot going on, and a lot of people are vying for our attention, whether they're little people or friends or pastors, it doesn't matter. We've got a lot of people needing us. So as we think about this voice, I want you to know this, that there's only one voice that really and truly does matter, and that's God's voice. Amen. So above all others, above everything else, if there's one thing that you have to, moms, listen to on a daily basis to get you through and to keep you sane, it is God's voice alone. So how do we know that God's voice is the one that matters most? Well, he has said it from the very, very beginning, starting in Genesis, right? He talked to Adam and Eve, and in Genesis 2:16 and 17, he says this. He's talking to Adam, and he says, "And the Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you will certainly die." And then walks in the second voice in Genesis 3:1. I didn't put this on the slide, Christy, so don't panic. He said, did God really say not to eat of this fruit? Did God really say that? Voice number 2. So Adam and Eve from the very beginning had those two voices in their heads at the same time. And they chose. They had to choose one, because you can't choose two to listen to at the same time. And then in John 10:4, how else do we know that God's voice needs to be the only one in our life? go to John. John 10:4 says this. When he has brought out all of his own, he goes on ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. So we've got to familiarize ourselves with God's voice by getting with him, by meeting with him, by prioritizing him and spending time with him. And then in Matthew 6:24, let's look at that, verse 2. It says this, no one can serve two masters. Either you'll hate the one and you'll love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. But you cannot serve both. You just can't. We can't. As much as we want to. As much as we want to be involved in everything, and we want to be really good at everything, being a mom and a wife and a friend and a volunteer, we want to be good at all of it. But we can't. We just can't be everything for all people all the time. And that's why today it's so important that I want you to understand that you have permission to start breathing easy under the weight of all these expectations. And I'm going to tell you why. We have the opportunity to breathe easy by making a choice. And the choice is this, that we begin to protect our priorities. But let me get a little bit more specific. Not just protecting our priorities for the day. What I'm talking about is we've got to start protecting the priorities that God has set up for us. And they're very simple. Let me tell you about them real quick. Deuteronomy 6:5 says this. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. That's number one. Priority number one. Love God with everything you've got. Top priority. Okay? Second priority is Ephesians 5:31. And this is the verse that explains that for this reason a man will leave his father and mother, and the two will be united in one flesh. And this is our marriage. Priority number 2 is our marriage. So, priority 1 is God. Priority number 2 is our marriage. And priority 3 is going to be our children. In that order. And everything flows from that order. Everything flows from it. And no matter what, we're always going to breathe easier when we keep our priorities in line. Always. Always. And I'll tell you this, you'll know as soon as you start getting these priorities out of line, because a lot of things happen. We begin to either feel kind of like the suffocation from the guilt that maybe we failed in meeting an expectation of a friend, or maybe our husband is kind of disappointed in us because we failed to do something for him. Maybe we dropped the ball here, and so we just start feeling the suffocation of the guilt of not being able to keep up. And we may have some regrets. There may be tension, but ultimately, I always know for me, whenever I get to this point where my priorities are out of line, I always know it because I have this overwhelming feeling that I just can't win. In the little things and the big things, I just can't win. And I've had a lot of days like that, where the day comes to an end and I'm like, no, I don't think I won that one. I don't think that was a win. And it's because I didn't protect my priorities. And I know we can relate. I know, because this is just, as a mom, we have stepped into the responsibility of having a lot of people who really and truly need us, right? So I love this. I'm excited to share this with you because this has been a game changer for me lately. So my husband Colston, he's noticed how stressful this month has been for me, and so he's come to me lovingly. And I know his heart, so it was good. This was a good conversation that he and I had. But he said this. He said, whenever you're faced with a decision, because I truly have had to, I'm really not that busy all the time, guys. Don't hear it that way. But there's just been a lot going on, right? So there's been some things that I've had to say no to that would have been perfectly fine to go to, right? Events, but I just had to say no because I knew that I needed to give my family more, and so I just had to say no, even though I could have said yes. But my husband has noticed this, and so he said, "Hey, Em, I want you to start using a filter, this new filter, and it's a question." And Andy Stanley says it. And he said, as soon as you have to come face to face with a decision, he said, whether it's meeting a friend for lunch or committing to a new Bible study, whatever, insert whatever that may be. But he said this, he said, ask yourself the question, what does love require of me in that moment? As a mom, what does love require of us, and what should our answer be? So in asking that question, we have to remember that the most loving answer to the question that you're facing is always going to be protecting your priorities. It's the most loving answer that you can present. Even if it may not be the answer that your friend wants to hear, or that your husband wants to hear, or that, the leadership at church wants to hear. But if you're protecting your priorities, it's always going to allow you to breathe easier, and it's always going to honor God. So, just know that even under the high pressure of expectations, when we choose to protect our priorities, we do honor God ultimately. But the best thing that what I love about this question is that we can now come face to face with the truth that perfect love casts out fear. And we don't have to be afraid of making decisions as a mom that we know are going to protect our family and protect our priorities, protect our relationship with God. We can make decisions now that protect those things, and we don't have to be afraid about it. We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry what people are going to think or what they're going to say, or, this fear of missing out. That's a big thing for me. I really do have this massive fear of missing out my whole life. I've always been that way. But I know that when I'm choosing to step forward in love, first and foremost, that's my opportunity to protect my priorities, and I can't be afraid of the result, because I know that in protecting those priorities, God is getting the honor and the glory in that. And that's most important to me, and I know that it's very important to all of us. So we got to keep that in mind. And that verse, perfect love casts out fear, is found in 1 John 4:18. Keep that one close. So our goal as we begin to protect our priorities is we move from this position of, as a mom, trying to always keep up with everything going on. We move from this goal of I just got to keep up. I just got to make everybody happy. I just have to make sure that I do it right and I do it fully, or that we just move from this place of trying to keep up. And now, when we are protecting our priorities by stepping out first in love, ultimately, what happens is that we move to this place of pleasing God. That's our goal. Our goal changes. And that's really, really, really important for us moms, that we move from this goal of trying to just simply keep up with all of it to now pleasing God. And there is incredible freedom in that. Incredible freedom. So, as we move from trying to keep up to now we're trying to aim to please God, we have to know now that our family's going to win every time. Our top priorities are going to win. And that's the ultimate. So, in that, we're going to become more determined to meet God's expectations above everybody else's. And I've lived a lot of time not quite there, where my goal was, I just got to meet their expectation. I just have to be good enough. I just have to make sure my teeth don't fall out in front of all you guys. I just got to meet that expectation. That's all I want for today. No, I'm just kidding. But we are going to now become more determined to meet God's expectation than anybody else's. And in that, we honor him big time. But there's two results from this. And this is, I hope that you'll remember this, because it's so important that we can approach every invitation and every expectation with confidence in the decision that we're going to make. And that's what happens when we protect our priorities, is that now we can move forward. And when we get that text from a friend, and when we get that invitation to now lead something new, and we really can process it, and then we can make the best decision based on our priorities first. And based on the outcome, we don't have to worry or fear about the answer that we give or the decision that we make. And that is, to me, I don't know about you, but that has been so big for me lately, is just being able to approach something that comes up, an opportunity that comes up, with confidence, knowing that, hey, if I have to say no, it's all good, because I know I'm protecting my own priorities, the ones that God has given only to me. Because our priorities are very similar. Our priorities look a lot alike, God, husband, children, but our priorities are clearly very different. They all have different names and faces. God has assigned our children only to us. And so we have to protect those priorities with everything we've got, right? So the second result is just simply this, that the burden of trying to meet everybody's expectation is now lifted, and we can breathe easy when it comes to keeping up with everybody, because now we're just choosing to simply please God and protect what he's given us. And I think that is so vital for us, whether we are stepping into a new season of having a second or a third child and we're at home all the time, or maybe, you're kind of in my boat where I've got kids, one in preschool, one in kindergarten, and, I've got to now navigate, hey, there's a lot that I could do. I could step into more things. But what is it that's going to be best for my family? How am I protecting my relationship with God first and foremost? How am I protecting that and making that happen every single day? That's key. We got to start our day with Christ and protect that time with Him, because everything flows from it. So, knowing that our decision-making process can be greatly improved, we don't have to be afraid of saying no. And listen, I want to even tell you this, because sometimes it's not about saying no. Sometimes, moms, you protecting your priorities means saying yes to going on that retreat to get away. It might mean saying yes to going out with a friend, or spending time with a mentor, or paying for a babysitter so that you can step away for a minute. I would definitely say that's protecting your priorities as best as you can. It means being selfish about your time with God. Be super selfish about that. Okay? That it's so important for us as moms, as wives, as friends. We have to be selfish about our time with God. But protecting our priorities isn't always a no. It doesn't mean just saying no to something. It can mean saying yes. Because I know there are some women here who we may find it easier to be home all the time. But protecting our priorities can mean saying yes and stepping out. So you've really got to look at what yours is, what your life looks like, and what the priorities are for you, and then go from there. But always, first and foremost, invite God into it. Make Him the top priority. Invite Him in and ask Him to show you and move through you. And He's going to do it, to show you what to do, what's the right step. But if our goal is always to please God and not to just simply keep up, it's going to change everything. And we can truly begin breathing easy again under the weight of all of the expectations. Whether this is a quiet season for you or a busy season, it's always going to go like this for us as our kids get older. So I just want you to understand that you have permission today to start breathing easy under the weight of everybody's expectations. So be firm. Fight for the priorities. Fight for those things. And I'm telling you, it's going to make a world of difference as you grow and as your kids get to watch you as mom, choosing to fight for them, fight for their heart first and foremost. And it just sets them up to make really great decisions for themselves too, right? So as I'm getting ready to kind of close this out, I really wanted to do something a little bit more practical. We're talking about breathing easy. And so I wanted to leave you with something that you can do on your own. Because if you're like me, my kids hear me do this a lot. Even my daughter, my 6-year-old, has picked up on it. I'm like, oh, sweet. That's horrible. No, I want us to get into this habit of inhaling the promises and the voice of God. Because if you're like me, you need it all the time. Every day, all the time. So we need to start practicing inhaling God's voice and His promises and taking that in, and then exhaling the burden that we've allowed ourselves to carry, right? And so what I want us to do, and you feel free to do this with me, this is just a quick little exercise, but you can either just listen or you can participate, whatever you want to do. But I just want you to kind of get this in your head, this idea of breathing in the promises, listening to God's voice, but then exhaling the burden. We're not supposed to carry that. So we got to start practicing exhaling it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a scripture, and I want you to, I'll keep it short so you're not inhaling for 20 minutes. So I'm going to have you inhale as I'm reading this scripture. And then I'm going to move into, I'm just going to read just a very brief little burden that you can exhale and let go of, okay? So as I'm reading that, you can kind of just exhale. There's 4 of them, so if you get lightheaded really easily, just take it easy. No, but again, feel free to just listen up, but I want you to just get this process in your head, okay? So here we go. So we're going to inhale. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and deliverer, in whom I take refuge, my shield and my stronghold. And exhale, I release the burden of managing it all on my own. Inhale, there is no fear in love. Perfect love drives out fear. So I won't be afraid of letting people down. Inhale, therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life. So I exhale, I won't worry about pleasing everyone, only God. And finally, inhale, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. So as we exhale, I will stop allowing too many voices to begin listening to God's voice alone. All right, let's go ahead and pray. God, you're so good to bring a room full of mamas together. In this season of life, God, things are so busy, and they are so chaotic, and there's a lot on our plate. There's a lot expected of us, God. We don't get a break. We don't get a timeout. And God, you know where we're struggling. You know where we're hurting. You know the burdens that we're carrying in this area, God, and we just want to spend some time giving that over to you, God, because we know that you've not given us promises so that they can sit in your word, God, but you've given us promises so that we can inhale them and then exhale all of the negative and the burden that we are not meant to carry. And God, I just pray that you would be with each woman as this week, as she goes out, God, and she's faced with the decision that she can honor her family and protect her relationship with you, God, and that she would choose to do that she would fight for that first and foremost, God. And so in order for her to just be able to breathe easy under the weight of all of it, God, we know you're good. You're so good. You love us enough to give us these promises and to always fulfill them. And so, God, I just pray for each woman in here that she would just begin inhaling your promises, exhaling the burden, God. She'd protect her priorities that only you have given to her, God. They're such a blessing. So walk with us today as we go out. We love you and we praise you and we thank you for this time to just be together and to just take a quick breath. We love you, God. In your name, amen. Thank you, guys. We're going to break into table time.